Her eyes darted up. She stopped the beating. Akash looked at her, eyeing her to continue, but Padma shook her head. We need to leave. He gave a charming grin to the awaiting public and reached out to her, whispering, Stop getting worried. All right, it'll be fine. We can get caught, Padma said. Ratri sent a message. He cut her off. Ratri is paranoid ever since she has been shifted to a stupid library. Stop worrying and beat the damn drums. And that was when she heard it. The galloping horses appeared and the crowd began to instantly disperse, afraid of being seen next to enemies of the state. No, there were 4 Nagas in front of her on horses, and in the middle there was a woman with onyx black hair, so long it had to be braided. Now what is this going on? Seditions perhaps, darling, asked the woman. It was supposed to be some kind of threat, but it came off as a seductive comment. Perhaps this woman was working for the Nagas, but the way she positioned herself clearly showed she was more authoritative than just a usual commander. She had an air about her, with her chin up, her angular nose and eyebrows lifted up. Don't kill them. I love the pseudo-revolutionaries. She clapped with delight. What the? And that was when the first Naga appeared with a blade, reaching out for Akash, who whimpered and fell back. Padma had to do something. She also saw another Naga coming, while the rest of the crowd around them simply melted away. As they came close, Padma and Akash were cornered against the brick building. She tossed the drum on the side end. Padma whistled. Instantly, the owl on her shoulder launched itself, smashing one of the Nagas on the face. It fell back. The Naga was a tall person, not too muscular like the Rakshas, but with snake-shaped tattoos on their bodies. And for all the toughness they showed, one of them was knocked down by a bird. As the other Nagas got puzzled by the bird attack, Padma took the advantage of the wall, leaping against it, in the process pulling out 2 long daggers. To the one who had reached out to the frightened Akash, she flung her dagger. Akash yelled. Padma rolled her eyes. He was not even helping and he was creating such noise. It was irritating on a whole lot of fronts. The other Nagas came towards her, seemingly as she was more confrontational and dangerous. The fact that she had killed the officers of the court meant she was getting the noose or the axe. And she out of all the people knew how horrifying it was to even watch it, let alone be a victim of the draconian ritual. She couldn't kill the Nagas. She knew. She didn't use her dagger, but she pulled out copper coins, panas, out of her pocket. They were reddish and rounder than usual, with the strange carvings of Indragar's motto inscribed over it. She tossed them across towards the Naga's feet, which made them trip when they clumsily stepped over the coins. Padma chuckled. They stood up, and by the time they did, Padma kneed one of them. He fell back, while the other managed to stand up, launching towards her with a blade. She dodged it, her body rolling on the ground and falling at the back. She tapped on the confused Naga's shoulder, who looked behind himself and was punched for his efforts. The other man had no weapon, but he was bigger than the rest. He began to shake his fist. I'm going to kill you. I'm done being nice. Padma flung another of her daggers right across the Naga's upper chest, where the breastplate didn't cover the skin. He looked down at it and pulled it out, only to realize Padma had just hit him at the veins. Blood sprayed and he collapsed on the ground. She grabbed for the body that covered Akash. She tossed him to the side, pulling the dagger from him. Let's go. Akash stood up, gulping and shivering. They turned, and as they did, Padma realized she was standing in front of 10 more Nagas. They all had spears in their hands. Shields covered them. They were ready to war with a commoner like her. And they stood there, with their weapons drawn inches away from their neck. How did they even manage to come so fast? Oh God, we are dead. I told you we should have gone. Akash whimpered. Please, please don't hurt us. Please, I don't want to die. You must be joking. Padma rolled her eyes, but squared her shoulders and came in front of Akash. She was not afraid, for she had seen and felt something worse than death. And that was grief. You really thought you would escape, darling? Asked the lady as she rounded off with a black stallion, with several more men stationed behind her. You mustn't underestimate those you oppose. Padma didn't utter a word. Take the boy, she ordered. You know where to send him. Sorry, Akash pleaded before Padma was pushed to the ground and Akash was taken by the Nagas. Another one was gone. To be fair, she didn't feel bad. Sure, he was helpful, but he was indeed just derailing her mission. The woman on the black horse came onto her feet, and the moment her legs met the floor there was a clink sound. Padma noticed a small anklet wrapped around her ankle. Padma noticed how the woman had one limb hand while the other was functional. Take the injured and send them over to the infirmary. If they aren't all right by tomorrow, tell them they are exiled, the woman said, before her eyes caught the attention of Padma. She had light blue irises that seemed to reflect the color of the skies. My name is Princess Mansa, sister of Lord Vasuki. The Naga royal studied Padma intently. I hope you don't feel bad for your friend. He wasn't really helping your cause, and those who don't help in your cause should just be debarred from existing. Mansa walked over the panas, which Padma had tossed on the ground. These are coins which were used during the Mahayuddha. How did you find them? How did she know what coins were used during the Mahayuddha? I am a collector, Padma said. Collecting coins had been her hobby. It was something she loved doing since she was 7 years old. Mansa handed her back the coin. Padma took it, surprised by the generosity of the Naga princess. She stuffed it in her dangling pouch. I like your hair. She played with it, lacing her thin long fingernails painted a dark ruby red through her hair. Is it natural? Padma shook her head. She felt like she had a mother at that moment in the midst of the Humdrum market, flanked by Naga guards. You are special, my dear. Mansa continued playing with the silver hair, rolling it in her fist as if to feel it, and Padma could feel a slight, soft jerk. Quite special. A girl so young who is able to fend off trained men. Now that's a sight I have been dying for. In this god-forsaken city, unlike the Manavs, the Nagas take pride in giving the best of education and warfare technique. Spying is a crucial art they perform, in which the women are more important than their male counterparts. Men are taught about philosophy, but they end up with suras and wines at their disposal, while women are the harbingers of knowledge and peace. You remind me of a Naga. Why do you do what you were doing? Padma remained quiet. Anything spoken against the state would be sedition. Do you hate the ruler? Padma looked up at her. Ah, indeed. This is where we both align, because I hate him too. She softly smiled. My dear, we both, if we worked together, could achieve something wonderful. If you do decide to take my offer, drop into my office sometime, she said. So why was she going around the city stopping propagandists? Was it that she was trying to build an army of people who hated the state rulers? But why? What did she have against the king? To me, all of this seems like an endlessly tedious affair, with little fruit to savor in the end. She grabbed her by the arms and began to walk with her, the Nagas trailing around. And I love fruits. You deserve a good ending after waiting for so long, am I not right? Padma nodded. She didn't know where the Naga was going with this, but wherever it was, she knew she was going to be a part of it. Also, she had never felt what power really looked like until today. You work too hard at the wrong end. The real fruit you shall receive, if you do what I say, and we can both get rid of the man you detest. Are there others like me? Everyone failed to impress me except you, darling, Princess Mansa said. For your favors, you will be given everything you desire. Padma realized that they had reached a building which was none other than the entry gates of the Naga fort. After the inclusion of the Tiavan Bialis, forts were built that suited them, and Manavs had to work for them to be built. Many detested the idea, but the look of the entire fort was beautiful. She didn't know what to feel or what not to feel, but she knew aligning with Mansa could be good in the long run. She could either get killed or be revered and rewarded, but she didn't mind the initial, if it somehow led her to achieve her vendetta against Vedanta. As they walked along the corridors of the fort, they were closing on the path that led to a short door. The guards departed and Padma's heartbeat increased. She was in enemy land, and this was one of the places she had been fighting against, and yet here she was, in the midst of it. The thought of Akash being dragged to the jail cell did cross her mind, but a parole would be granted by Ratri and he would be free. These thoughts shouldn't crowd her mind now. She sat in the magnificent room that had been robbed of its glory by all the books that were kept on the racks. She hated books. She had tried reading a few of them, but none appealed to her varied interests. What do you want me to do? Oh, yes, I will tell you, but first. She took out another pouch from the drawers and tossed it over at the table. Padma looked at it, confused, before opening it up to find gold and silver panas, karshapnas, surashtras, and cowries. Grinning, she held them out in the open. They were no longer valid currency forms, and were only useful as collectible treasure. I am sort of a collector as well. I'm glad we have same interests, darling, Mansa said. Padma looked up. You can have all of it. Padma left the pouch. It was blood money. It came with a price. The point was she ready to pay the price? Don't worry. What do I have to do for you? Padma asked again, this time sternly. Oh, it'll be fun. Mansa had a glint in her eyes. You get to play with weapons for sure. I can't do this. It was hard refusing all of it. I can't work for me. I am an innocent woman, my dear. You should realize we are aligned more towards peace and non-violence than you know. She laid her hand in the front, over the table. A voice boomed from the back. Padma turned to see a handsome, black-haired man standing, with crystal blue eyes and a grin that was lazily playing on his face. He had long robes of dark blue wrapped around his frame. He came forward with the same snide, royal attitude, rounding close to Mansa. She is right, he hissed. By the very virtues, it was clear who the man was, Vasuki, the prince of Nagas or the king. More or less, the Nagas didn't have a lot of titles to go with in the first place, so they chose whatever suited their names best. That was what the talk of the town was. Mansa's voice had automatically turned far more sinister, rasping, as she said, because in the end, it comes down to this: either you do what I say and get these beautiful coins as a token of my gratitude for being a valuable servant of the court, or you'll be executed tomorrow for attacking a state official. Her fist clenched and the smile was not friendly anymore. Now it is your choice, love. Kali had been running. He had forgotten for how long. When he did manage to open his eyes, they darted over to the front. He walked to the white marble pedestal of sorts, resting against the cool balustrade. His hands began to trace the droplets of water inside the shallow pool, as he saw the reflection of the man he had become. He had changed. The illness had eaten into his skin, exposing his emaciated frame, bony limbs, and sparse hair. He was growing bald, and that was the last thing he wanted. He had been revered as a handsome man always, but now he felt he was changing. If it wasn't for his loving sister, Kali would have died perhaps. The illness and the stab had caused him tremendous pain. He couldn't believe he had clawed his way out with the help of Durukti. She had given him some sort of a tasteless, odorless liquid, blue as the Naga's irises. He had swallowed it in one gulp. He took one more shot a few days later and felt instantly better. That was 3 days back. Now, he had slowly started gaining in strength. He didn't feel sick. No matter what that liquid was, he had come out of the illness because of it. There were guards and his officials that operated insides of the fort, working on their daily chores. He didn't care for that. He had forgotten about the politics he had been going through. He stood up, stretching his body a little, when his eyes were drawn to his reflection. It had changed. Slowly, he crept forward and he realized he hadn't changed, but the water had. It had turned red, bloody, but it wasn't dark or opaque. It was light where his reflection was visible, and he looked horrible. His skin had deteriorated in the reflection, and he had gone bald and hairless. He was wearing a strange scarf around his neck to hide his leprosy, and at that moment, he saw the juxtaposition of various images that swiftly began to come forth in front of him. He couldn't understand it. A sharp, splitting headache shot across his head, and he felt he had gone through something worse than death. His body felt frail, and he fell on his knees, his eyes strained at the bloody water, until he saw a few more individuals coming in beside his reflection, standing right next to him. And the worst part was, they were all burnt. You couldn't protect us, brother. You couldn't protect us, the burnt reflection of a child said, but his voice echoed as if he spoke from an alternate world. You left us there. You left your brothers. They all were speaking in unison. The water began to furiously froth and bubble. What is happening? How should I redeem myself? He cried out. How should I? You keep coming to me and I don't know what I should do. Honor us, they said in unison, their voice growing in frequency now. Honor you how? What do you want me to do? The hands lifted out of the water, and the burnt fingers of the ghosts pulled and grabbed him by the neck. He choked until he was pulled inside the bloody water, his eyes wide as he saw the burnt siblings of his, who had no face, no eyes, but were a mere facade. They were indescribably grotesque, just like a burnt victim would be. Honor your roots, seek your heritage, and the hands pushed him back. Right out of the bloody water, he was tossed over the ground, and recovering from a deadly bout of choking cough, he realized he was still sitting at the same spot. He wasn't wet, The water was blue and everything was stable. It was a delusion, he told himself. Why? A message from the dead to find his heritage. It wasn't the illness. This was a sign, Kali knew. Some sort of an odd sign. His heritage was dark, but he knew it already. Half the reason he thought the village had burnt was because the ones who burnt it got to know who Kali was and what sort of a family he had been hiding. His kind was a plague. The Asuras, the worst of the kind, the lepers of existence, called the so-called demons, even though they were simple-minded people. All Asuras were supposed to grow into the Dark Age, the so-called prophesized future where murder and chaos ruled the world. He hadn't told anyone except Drupti who they were, not because it was dangerous, but because he wouldn't like the way they would look at him after that. Let him be a mystery, he thought. That would be for the best. Kali thought of not running anywhere and decided to trudge off to his office, when he ran into Kuvera, who was entering the fort in his typically portly manner, accompanied by a beautiful consort and a few yakshas. For a man who was supposed to be controlling the city finances, Kuvera seemed rather modest at first glance. I see you are doing well. Yes, I'll be returning for the council meeting, Kali said. What was he doing here? He didn't ask too many questions though, for that would come off as blunt. He didn't want Kuvera to be on his bad side since he was the first one who volunteered to take down Kikatpur and the rest of the northern kingdoms in Ilavarti. Are we having that now? We have to. I apologize for being too forward, Kuvera smiled. But how is your back? He asked, looking not the least bit apologetic about his intrusive question. And Kali would have had joy in breaking his fat face, but he chose not to. He was being grumpy for some reason. He would always be calm and quiet, and yet now he wanted to shake off the restlessness from his fingers and his chest that had a certain heaviness to it. He felt jittery and aggressive for some reason.